The music stopped. Not gradually, just stopped. Mid-song, the trumpet fell silent. The piano went quiet. And in the sudden vacuum of sound, every person in the Cotton Club turned to look at the stage. Louis Armstrong stood there, horn in hand, face expressionless, but his shoulders were tight, his jaw was set, and the way he lowered his trumpet, slowly, deliberately, told everyone in that room something was wrong. It was March 7, 1936, Chicago. The Cotton Club was the place to be. If you could afford it, if you could get in, if you were the right color. It was one of those establishments where black musicians played for white audiences, where genius was allowed to perform but not to sit at the tables, where the talent entered through the back door and the customers through the front. Louis Armstrong was 34 years old, already a legend, already the most famous jazz musician in America. His recordings sold millions, his concerts filled halls, his smile was recognized worldwide. But in Chicago, in March 1936, Louis Armstrong still couldn't eat in most restaurants, still couldn't stay in most hotels, still had to watch white musicians with half his talent get paid twice his salary. The Cotton Club had booked him for a 2-week residency, top billing, good money, sold-out shows every night. Louis had been performing there for 6 nights. Everything had been fine, professional, respectful. The management treated him well. The audience loved him, no problems. Until the 7th night, until a group of men arrived at the best table in the house. 4 men, expensive suits, loud voices, the kind of men who expected doors to open for them, who expected the world to rearrange itself around their comfort. Louis was midway through his first set when they arrived. He was playing Basin Street Blues. The crowd was swaying, drinks were flowing, the atmosphere was electric. Louis could feel it. That magic moment when a room full of strangers becomes one organism breathing together through music. And then the magic broke. One of the men at the front table stood up, walked toward the stage, not stumbling, not drunk, just purposeful. He reached the edge of the platform and looked directly at Louis, waited for a pause in the music, then spoke, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "We didn't pay good money to watch a colored boy play trumpet. Get him off the stage." The room didn't go completely silent, but enough people heard, enough people turned, enough people stopped talking. The band kept playing. They'd been trained to keep playing no matter what. But Louis heard. Of course Louis heard. He didn't stop playing, finished the phrase, finished the verse, brought the song to a clean ending. The band followed his lead, professional, controlled. Then Louis lowered his horn, looked at the man, and spoke quietly, calm. No anger in his voice. "Sir, I'm just here to play music. That's all." The man's face went red. "I don't care what you're here for. I'm here to have a nice evening without looking at your face. So either you leave or we leave. And if we leave, we're taking everyone else with us." It was a bluff. Probably. But it was effective. The man's companions were nodding. Other tables were watching. Some people looked uncomfortable. Some looked sympathetic. But nobody said anything. Nobody stood up to defend Louis. Nobody challenged the man. The club manager appeared from the wings, a nervous man named Arthur Clemens. He'd managed the Cotton Club for 8 years, made good money, knew how to keep customers happy, knew how to avoid trouble, and right now, trouble was standing at the edge of his stage. Arthur walked over to the man, spoke quietly. The conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then Arthur turned and walked toward Louis. His face was apologetic, pained, but his message was clear. "Louis, I'm sorry, can you take a break? Maybe 15 minutes. Let me handle this." Louis looked at Arthur, then at the band, then at the audience. Most of them were watching, waiting to see what would happen, waiting to see if the famous Louis Armstrong would be kicked off his own stage. Louis made his decision. He set down his trumpet, carefully, deliberately. Then he spoke to the band. "Take 5, fellas." His voice was steady, professional, no anger, no bitterness, just a man who'd been through this before, who knew how this worked. The band members stood, gathered their instruments, started walking toward the backstage area. Louis followed them. The audience started talking again. Some were angry, some were relieved, some didn't seem to care. The 4 men at the front table ordered champagne, laughing. They'd won. Backstage, Louis' band was furious. The piano player, Earl Hines, wanted to walk out entirely. The drummer wanted to confront the men. The bassist was pacing, talking about dignity, about respect, about how they shouldn't have to take this. Louis listened, then spoke quietly. "It's okay. We've seen worse. We'll see worse again. Let's just get through tonight. Keep our heads down. Play the music. That's what we do." Earl shook his head. "How can you be so calm? They just kicked you off your own stage." Louis smiled. That famous smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Being angry won't change anything. We play by their rules, or we don't play at all. That's just how it is." But Louis was wrong, because while the band was backstage, someone else had been watching. Someone who didn't play by those rules. Someone who had just walked into the Cotton Club for a quiet drink and had witnessed the entire incident. Bing Crosby was 32 years old, the biggest star in America, more popular than Louis in terms of mainstream success, more records sold, more movies made, more money earned. He was white, he was privileged, he was powerful, and he was sitting at a corner table with his wife Dixie, watching Louis Armstrong get humiliated. Dixie noticed Bing's face change, saw his jaw tighten, saw his hands grip the table edge. She put her hand on his arm. "Bing, don't." Bing didn't look at her. "Don't what?" "Don't get involved. You know how these things work." "Yeah, I know exactly how they work." Bing stood up. Dixie tried to stop him. "Bing, please. Think about your career. Think about the backlash. You can't fight every battle." Bing looked at his wife, spoke quietly. "If I don't fight this one, what's the point of any of it?" He walked across the club, straight to the manager's office. Knocked once. Walked in without waiting for an answer. Arthur Clemens looked up from his desk, startled, then recognized Bing, stood up immediately. "Mr. Crosby, I didn't know you were here tonight. Is everything okay?" Bing closed the door behind him. "No, everything is not okay. Louis Armstrong is the best musician in this country. And you just let some drunk racist kick him off his own stage." Arthur's face went pale. "Mr. Crosby, I understand how it looks, but how it looks is that you value money more than dignity. That you'd rather keep 4 bigots happy than stand up for the man who's been selling out your club for a week. Sir, please understand. Those men, they're connected. They spend a lot of money here. If I upset them, they could cause real problems for the club." Bing leaned against the desk, spoke calmly, quietly. "Arthur, I'm going to make this very simple. Either Louis Armstrong gets back on that stage right now, or I walk out, and I'll make sure every newspaper in Chicago knows exactly why I walked out." Arthur's eyes went wide. "Mr. Crosby, please. You don't understand the position this puts me in. I understand perfectly. You're worried about losing those 4 customers, but let me tell you what you should be worried about. If I walk out and tell people why, you won't just lose 4 customers, you'll lose everyone who respects talent over bigotry. And that's a lot of people, Arthur. A lot of money." Arthur sat down, put his head in his hands. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to go out there, tell those men that Louis Armstrong is performing tonight as scheduled. If they don't like it, they can leave. And if they make any more trouble, you throw them out, personally. And if they complain, if they cause problems," Bing smiled, "then I'll personally testify that they were drunk and disorderly. Who do you think people will believe? 4 nobody businessmen or Bing Crosby?" Arthur stood up, took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Good. And one more thing." "What?" "When Louis comes back on stage, I'm going with him. We're singing together. You got a problem with that?" Arthur stared at Bing. "You want to sing with Louis Armstrong? On my stage? That's exactly what I want. Unless you'd rather I go to the club down the street and do it there instead." Arthur shook his head. No, of course not. It would be an honor, Mr. Crosby." "Good. Then let's make this happen." Bing walked backstage, found Louis sitting on a crate, staring at his trumpet. The rest of the band was still angry, still talking about walking out, still talking about dignity. Louis just sat quietly, processing, dealing with it the way he'd learned to deal with everything. Accept it, move forward, survive. Then Bing walked in. The band went silent. Louis looked up, confused. Bing Crosby didn't hang out backstage at the Cotton Club. He didn't hang out backstage anywhere unless he was performing. Bing walked straight to Louis. extended his hand. Louis, I'm Bing. I don't think we've officially met. Louis stood, shook Bing's hand. I know who you are, Mr. Crosby. Everyone knows who you are. Call me Bing. And I just had a conversation with your manager. He's handling those gentlemen at the front table. You're going back on stage. Louis's face showed surprise, then skepticism. That's kind of you to say, but I don't think those men are going anywhere. They are if they want to keep their teeth. But that's not the point. The point is this. I'd like to sing with you, tonight, on that stage, if you'll have me. Louis stared at Bing. You want to sing with me? Why? Bing shrugged. Because you're Louis Armstrong. Because this is wrong. And because I can do something about it. So I'm going to. Crosby, with respect, do you know what you're doing? Those men out there, they're not going to like a white man singing with a black man, and your fans, they might not. Bing cut him off. My fans can deal with it, and if they can't, they're not really my fans. Now Louis, what do you say? You want to make some music together? Louis looked at his trumpet, then at Bing, then smiled. That real smile, the one that came from somewhere genuine. Yeah, I'd like that very much. Arthur Clemens walked back into the main room. The Cotton Club was buzzing with conversation. The four men at the front table were celebrating their victory, toasting each other, making crude jokes, laughing loudly. They'd shown that colored boy his place. They'd won. Arthur approached their table. His hands were shaking but his voice was steady. Gentlemen, I need to inform you that Louis Armstrong will be resuming his performance momentarily. The ringleader, the one who'd confronted Louis, stood up. His face went red. What did you just say? Mr. Armstrong is the featured performer tonight. He has a contract. He will be completing his set. If that's a problem for you, I'd be happy to refund your cover charge and drinks. The man stepped closer to Arthur, towering over him. You think you can just. I think you can leave quietly or I can have you removed. Your choice. The man laughed. Removed? By who? You? Arthur took a breath. By the gentleman at table 7. Everyone at the table turned to look. Table 7 was occupied by 3 very large men. Regulars. Men who worked for the club as security, but who dressed well enough to blend in. They were already standing, already watching, already moving closer. The ringleader looked at his friends, looked at the security, looked back at Arthur. He was angry but he wasn't stupid. This is ridiculous. We spend good money here and this is how you treat us. I appreciate your patronage, but Mr. Armstrong is performing tonight. That's not negotiable. The man threw his napkin on the table. Fine, we're leaving, and we're telling everyone we know about this place, about how you choose that over paying customers. That's your right, sir. The 4 men stood, grabbed their coats, walked toward the exit, making a show of it, talking loudly, making sure everyone knew they were offended. Some customers watched them leave. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked relieved. When they were gone, Arthur walked backstage, found Bing and Louis talking quietly, planning what to sing. Arthur cleared his throat. Gentlemen, they're gone. The stage is yours. Louis looked at Bing. You sure about this? Bing smiled. I've never been more sure of anything. They walked out together. Bing and Louis, side by side. The lights came up. The audience saw them. And the room went absolutely silent. Not the hostile silence from before. A different kind. Shock. Confusion. Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong, on stage, together. Bing stepped up to the microphone, spoke casually, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Good evening, folks. My name is Bing Crosby. I was just having a drink with my wife when I heard the greatest trumpet player in the world was performing tonight. So I asked if I could join him for a song. He was kind enough to say yes. A few people applauded, tentatively, not sure what was happening, not sure if this was planned or spontaneous. Louis picked up his trumpet, smiled at the audience, and I said yes because I never turned down a chance to make Mr. Crosby sound better than he actually is. The audience laughed. The tension broke slightly. Bing laughed too. See, Louis here thinks he's funny. Let's see if he's right. What should we play? Louis thought for a moment. You know Pennies from Heaven? Bing nodded. Irving Berlin. Good choice. I'll play. You sing. We'll see what happens. Louis raised his trumpet, started the intro. Slow, warm. That golden tone that made every note sound like it was wrapped in velvet. The audience leaned forward. They'd heard Louis on recordings, but hearing him live, in that small room, was different. It was intimate, personal, like he was playing just for them. Then Bing started singing. That smooth baritone, that effortless delivery, the way he made every word sound like a conversation, like he was talking to each person individually. His voice and Louis' trumpet wove together, trading phrases, complementing each other, two masters of their craft working in perfect harmony. The audience forgot to be shocked, forgot to be uncomfortable. They just listened, and slowly people started to smile, started to sway, started to remember why they'd come to the Cotton Club in the first place, for the music, for the magic. When the song ended, there was a moment of silence. Then the applause started. Not polite applause, real applause. Enthusiastic, genuine. People stood up. Some were crying, some were cheering. It wasn't just about the music, it was about what they'd witnessed. Two men, two different worlds, coming together on a stage and creating something beautiful. Bing and Louis looked at each other, both smiling. Louis extended his hand. Bing shook it, then pulled Louis into a hug, right there on stage, in front of everyone. A white man hugging a black man, in Chicago. Some people in the audience gasped. Some looked away, but most kept applauding, because they understood. They just witnessed something important. Something that transcended the rules and barriers that usually kept people separated. Bing spoke into the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen, Louis Armstrong, the greatest musician I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of musicians." Louis spoke quietly. "Thank you, Bing. That meant a lot. Meant a lot to me too. Let's do it again sometime. Anytime. You know where to find me." Bing walked off stage, returned to his table. Dixie was crying. She stood up and hugged him. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Bing shrugged. "Wasn't brave, just right." Louis continued his set, played for another hour. The audience was electric. People who'd been ready to leave stayed. People who'd been uncomfortable relaxed. People who'd witnessed history knew they'd remember this night forever. After the show, Bing waited by the stage door. Louis came out carrying his trumpet case. Surprised to see Bing still there. "You didn't have to wait. I know. Wanted to talk to you. Got a minute?" They walked down the alley, away from the crowd, away from the noise. Just two musicians talking in the Chicago night. Bing spoke first. "What happened tonight? That wasn't right. You shouldn't have to deal with that." Louis smiled sadly. "It happens, more often than you'd think. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be used to it. Nobody should. Maybe. But that's the world we live in." Bing stopped walking, turned to face Louis. "What if we changed it? What if we did this again? Not just once. Regularly. You and me, performing together, recording together, showing people that the color of your skin doesn't matter when the music is this good." Louis studied Bing's face, looking for the catch, looking for the angle, but Bing's eyes were sincere. "You know what that would cost you? The backlash, the criticism. Some people would never forgive you. Then those aren't people whose forgiveness I need. Your career could suffer. My career will be fine, but your career could benefit. That's what matters." Louis shook his head. "Why would you do this? Why would you risk anything for me? We barely know each other." Bing thought about it. "My mother used to say that talent is a gift from God, and when God gives you a gift, you have an obligation to honor it, to protect it, to make sure it's seen and heard. You have a gift, Louis, the kind that comes along once in a generation, and if I can help make sure that gift reaches people who need to hear it, then that's what I'm supposed to do." Louis was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Okay, let's do it. Let's make some music together." They shook on it, in that alley. In March 1936, a handshake that would change American music. A handshake that would help break down barriers. A handshake that would inspire a generation. Over the next 3 years, Bing and Louis performed together 7 more times. Sometimes at Bing's concerts where Louis would be a special guest. Sometimes at Louis' shows where Bing would surprise the audience. Each time people were shocked. Each time there was resistance. Each time the music won. In 1938, they recorded a song together, "Gone Fishin'." It was the first major recording of a black artist and white artist singing together as equals. Not with one as background, not with one as a novelty, but as partners. The recording was controversial. Some radio stations refused to play it. Some record stores refused to stock it, but it sold anyway. People wanted it. People bought it. People loved it. More importantly, it opened doors. Other white artists started collaborating with black musicians. Not as a gimmick, not as exploitation, but as legitimate partnerships. The walls started to crack, slowly, gradually, but they cracked. Louis never forgot what Bing did that night at the Cotton Club. Years later, in 1960, Louis was interviewed by a journalist writing a book about jazz history. The journalist asked Louis about the turning point in his career, the moment when he went from being a great musician to being an American icon. Louis thought about it, then said, March 7, 1936, Chicago, the Cotton Club. Bing Crosby walked onto a stage with me when he didn't have to, when it might have hurt his career, when a lot of people told him not to, but he did it anyway, because he believed in the music, he believed in me, and that night, people saw that jazz wasn't black music or white music. It was American music, and we could all share it together, the journalist pressed. But surely there were other important moments in your career. Louis smiled. Sure. Lots of moments, lots of concerts, lots of recordings. But that night in Chicago, that was different. That was the night I realized that change was possible, that people could choose to do the right thing even when it was hard. Bing chose, and that choice changed everything. Bing, when asked about the same incident years later, downplayed his role. Louis Armstrong didn't need me to make him great. He was already great. I just helped some people see what was already there. But those who were there that night knew better. They knew they'd witnessed something profound. Not just a performance, but a statement. A declaration that talent and dignity transcended color. That music was stronger than prejudice. That courage could come in simple acts. The Cotton Club incident became legendary in music circles. It was talked about in hushed tones. It was referenced in articles. It was held up as an example of what was possible, but the full story wasn't widely known. Bing made sure of that. He didn't want publicity, didn't want credit, didn't want to be seen as a hero. When reporters asked about it, Bing would shrug. Louis is a friend. Friends stand up for each other. That's all there is to it. But it wasn't all there was to it. Because that night created a ripple effect that spread far beyond the Cotton Club. Far beyond Chicago, far beyond night. Duke Ellington heard about what happened, started pushing for integrated performances, started refusing to play venues that segregated audiences. He had the courage to do it, because Bing had shown it was possible. Ella Fitzgerald got offers to perform with white orchestras because Bing and Louis had proven that integrated performances could be successful, could be profitable, could be transformative. Nat King Cole, a young pianist in 1936, heard the story. Years later, when he faced his own battles with racism in the music industry, he drew strength from what Bing had done, knowing that allies existed, knowing that change was possible. The integration of American music didn't happen because of one night in Chicago. It happened because of thousands of small acts of courage over decades. But that night at the Cotton Club was one of the first, one of the most visible, one of the most important. Arthur Clemens, the club manager, faced backlash after that night. Some of his regular customers stopped coming. Some of his investors questioned his judgment. But he stood firm, and he noticed something interesting. For every customer he lost, 2 new ones appeared. People who'd heard what happened, people who wanted to support a club that stood up for its artists. Within a year, the Cotton Club became known as the most progressive jazz venue in Chicago. The place where talent mattered more than color. The place where barriers were broken. Business actually improved. The 4 men who'd caused the incident, they told everyone about the terrible treatment they'd received at the Cotton Club. They tried to organize a boycott. It failed. Most people didn't care about their grievance, and many who heard the full story sided with the club, sided with Louis, sided with what was right. Years later, in 1971, one of those 4 men was dying. Cancer. He was 78 years old. On his deathbed, he asked his son to do something, to find Louis Armstrong and apologize. The son found Louis's address, wrote a letter explaining who he was, explaining what his father wanted. Louis read the letter, thought about it, then wrote back, "Tell your father I forgive him. We were all younger then. We all had things to learn. I hope he finds peace." The son read the letter to his father 2 days before he died. The old man cried, said he didn't deserve forgiveness. The son told him that's exactly why Louis gave it. Because forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about grace. Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong remained friends for the rest of their lives. They didn't perform together often. Their schedules rarely aligned. Their musical styles evolved in different directions, but they stayed in touch, called each other on birthdays, sent Christmas cards, checked in. In 1971, Louis Armstrong died. Heart attack. He was 69 years old. Bing was devastated. Flew to New York for the funeral. Spoke at the service. His voice broke several times. He talked about Louis's talent, his kindness, his courage, his grace, and he talked about that night in Chicago. Publicly, for the first time, he told the full story, about the four men, about the confrontation, about Arthur's courage, about Louis's dignity, about the handshake in the alley. Bing looked out at the packed church, at the musicians and fans who'd come to say goodbye, and he said something that everyone remembered. Louis Armstrong was the greatest musician I ever knew, but more than that, he was a teacher. He taught us that talent transcends barriers, that music can unite what prejudice divides, that grace is stronger than hate. I stood on a stage with him in 1936, because it was right. But Louis stood on that stage despite everything that told him he shouldn't. Despite the racism, despite the danger, despite the humiliation. He stood there and played his trumpet and showed the world what beauty sounds like. That's courage, that's strength, that's Louis. The church was silent. Then someone started clapping. Slowly, steadily. Others joined. Soon everyone was applauding, standing, honoring Louis, honoring what he represented, honoring the change he helped create. Bing Crosby died 6 years later in 1977. At his funeral, musicians from around the world came to pay respects. Black musicians, white musicians, Asian musicians, Latino musicians, all together, all equal, all there because Bing had helped create a world where that was possible. Someone played a recording of Gone Fishin', that 1938 collaboration between Bing and Louis. The sound filled the church. Bing's smooth baritone, Louis's golden trumpet. Two voices, two worlds, one beautiful piece of music, and everyone listening understood. This wasn't just a song, it was a statement, it was a legacy. It was proof that when people choose courage over comfort, when they choose right over easy, the world changes. The night of March 7, 1936 didn't end racism in America, didn't end segregation, didn't magically fix centuries of injustice, but it showed that change was possible, that individuals had power, that standing up mattered. Arthur Clemens, the club manager, told his grandchildren about that night before he died, told them about the four angry men, about Bing's courage, about Louis' grace, about the choice he had to make. And he told them something important. Every day you'll face moments where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right, between what's profitable and what's principled, between silence and courage. That night I almost chose wrong, almost chose easy, but Bing showed me that the right choice is always worth it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Those grandchildren grew up understanding that their grandfather had been part of something important, something that mattered, and they carried that lesson forward, passed it to their children, who passed it to theirs. That's how change happens, not in grand sweeping moments, but in small acts of courage, in handshakes in alleys, in choosing to stand on a stage when everyone says you shouldn't, in believing that music matters more than prejudice, that dignity matters more than profit, that doing right matters more than being comfortable. Louis Armstrong and Bing Crosby. March 7, 1936. The Cotton Club, Chicago. A night when music became more than entertainment, when it became a declaration, when two men showed America what was possible. The recording of their performance that night doesn't exist. No cameras captured it, no microphones preserved it. It lives only in memory, in the stories people told, in the change it inspired. But maybe that's fitting, because the power of that night wasn't in the notes they played or the words they sang. It was in what they represented. The possibility of unity, the power of courage, the transformative nature of choosing right over easy. Every musician who's ever performed across racial lines stands on the foundation built that night. Every integrated band, every collaborative recording, Every moment when music transcends the barriers that society builds, it all traces back to moments like that one, to people like Bing and Louis, to choices that mattered. That's the real story. Not just what they did, but what it meant, what it inspired, what it made possible. A handshake in an alley, a song on a stage, a choice to stand together when the world said they should stand apart, and the music played on. One stage, two men, one choice that changed American music forever. Here's my question: if you were Bing Crosby that night, would you have had the courage to walk on that stage? Write your answer in the comments. And here's the bigger question: when have you stood up for what's right, even when it was difficult? Share your story below. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to my story box. We tell the real stories behind the legends, the moments of courage that changed history. Turn on notifications. Our next story reveals another shocking moment when Bing Crosby used his fame to fight injustice. Thank you for watching.